All right, it says we're live. Man, that was so close. I almost totally blew this beyond out of the water. Now I got to figure out how to get my camera on. Okay, first things first. Can you hear me? Because I just did a mic test on it and nothing came up. And then I changed something and it looked like there's mic signals. I hope you remember them. Okay, I am audible, I am visible. Yay! Welcome once again then to ADRAMADA, another Dave Rush Ask Me Anything Digital Alchemy. And it is so glad, I am so glad to see you all here. What a busy, insane week. I put a show together about 2 hours ago. And that's how it goes. I have set things up and have had help in setting them up that things will be much better as far as preparation time in the future. And man, look forward. I got stuff coming. I got good, amazing, incredible stuff coming, and it's going to be a blast. So anyways, welcome to ADRAMADA. And as aforementioned in that title, I am Dave Rush, your tech from Texas. And we're a tech show. We talk about all things technical. I have leaned of late on Linux and Raspberry Pi stuff because I love that stuff. And tonight is going to be another one of those. But very shortly, maybe as early as next week's show, we'll get back into normal broad-based technology. I see Scott Jernigan here. Scott and I spoke yesterday, and Scott proposed a show and a tech, and we are going to put this together in the next couple of days, and as long as his schedule allows, and my schedule is going to allow, I've got some flexibility on Thursday nights now. We're going to have a show. It's going to be a together show. You're going to see Scott Jernigan. Heck, I may just turn my camera off and turn him loose, and our viewership will triple instantly. If you are watching this on archive, we recorded this on what is tonight, Thursday, October 26th, 5 days till Halloween. It was such a busy week, I didn't have time to put together a Halloween set, the annual Skull O shirt, and I have another awesome backdrop that I haven't used. We've been doing these shows for 3 years, 4 years, something like that now, and I've got this other backdrop, and I said, no, this one's on top, and I don't have time. Get that one out. Okay, fine. Slow be it. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, look, eep, op, ork, and that's the way things go. Let's see who was foolish enough to join us. I sat down at my desk about 20 minutes before showtime, and 3 people already here. So, hey, Tullowit, yeah, you're going to beat the crowd if you're going to do this 3.5 hours before everybody. Andromeda does march on. Hello, Patricia Grace, and all of your nerd greetings. 8 p.m., 7 p.m., wherever you are. Jason Helms is here. I'm on time for once. This is going to be a fun show. And it's not going to drag out because I don't have time to put together one of my never-ending shows. We're just going to talk about some cool stuff. I got slides. I got an interactive component. We'll wake up Putty and do some stuff. I started something a couple weeks ago, Scott. Screen caps from television programming of my youth, which is also timely your youth. We did Lost in Space last week. We also did that in commemoration of Mark Goddard, who passed away. He was Don West. And I've got some other really amazing ones. It's going to be fun for the next couple of weeks as we do those. Okay, everybody can hear. Scott's here and checking in, so coolness. Well, let's see what's going on in the world. Oh, hey, but wait, there's more. That's a person on the left. Keeping people secure, I think, is the general concept of that shape. So last week, we did a show on how to install Oracle Linux 9.2 on a Raspberry Pi. Oracle Linux is a very solid Red Hat derivative. It's a lot of fun if you're into Red Hat. I don't have a graphical environment on anything except my Ubuntu daily driver. Everything that I have here, I guess that's not true. Most of the Pis have a graphical interface, but all the other Linux boxes that I'm accumulating and running around here, they're all command line stuff, and it matters. So to call some command line box fun doesn't quite, sit well with some mindsets. It's fun. It's freaking fun. There's so many cool things to do. Unlike Rocky Linux and up until recent decisions and market forces, some other products like Alma Linux and CentOS and a couple others, Oracle Linux is not a bug for bug clone. It's a good functional Red Hat clone base, but with a lot of Oracle overtones to it. Now, I have had an insanely busy week. And so when I wrote this, I looked back. I said, when and where did I get time to pull this off? But sometime over the last 7 days, I managed to sit down at that Oracle box, and I know I did it a couple of times, not very long each time, just let's try this and then move along. Got other things to do. But I sat down and I said, there is one other thing that I did to the configuration as we walked out the door from the show last week, and that was to turn on a function, a feature, a process, whatever you want to call it, SELinux, known as security enhanced Linux. And okay, in fact, I even demonstrated how to do that. And then I walked away. And after I sat for a day, I said, you know what? I understand if I have to take a Security Plus exam, I can answer the questions on that exam about SELinux. But I really don't understand SELinux to a degree where I would sit down and be competent and be able to do what needs to be done. I've done it, I've played with it, but I don't know it. And so I said, well, this is the perfect opportunity to start really getting into it and learning some of the nitty gritties. What the heck is that? Oh. And so I said, I'm going to start playing with this Oracle box. And everything that I didn't work. No, actually, thank you, Scott. I'm doing this on purpose. I read Scott's messages and I start thinking about all the things in life that we've ever done together, and I totally sidetrack. Anyways, it didn't work. And so that was where everything kind of happened. I said, all right, well, now we really got to get into the thing and find out what's going on, what it takes to make it work. And so that was this week's project. Let's do SELinux in Oracle. But turns out you can't. Or maybe you can. I don't know. That's the problem. There is a simple thing that you're supposed to be able to do. You go into this file, you make this change to the file, you reboot, bam. SELinux is engaged. And it didn't happen. And there's all kinds of things that you can do in that file. And I tried them all. And it never happened. So I finally said, okay, well, I give up on this. I can keep digging forever. I need the help of professionals. So I joined the Oracle Developers Group. I'm not a developer, but I spoke with them and they said that I was most welcome to. Because what I had to say and what happened was an oh my gosh moment for all of them. You did what? And this didn't happen? So I am now in a development project with the nice folks at Oracle. And I'll show you what I've accomplished, and I'll share with you what I've learned about SELinux that's practical, everyday kind of useful stuff. So that's going to be today's show. Next week's show, I don't know what the project's going to be yet. Again, it could be the Scott and my thing. I'll talk with him this week and see what his schedule permits. And if not, hopefully, worst case, the following week, we'll be ready to rock on that. I'm going to go down the rabbit hole, do some of the research that he's done, and we'll be able to communicate and conversate. Oh, I love when people use that word in a nice format here. But I have another big thing on next week's show. Do not miss it. I can't give it away. Sorry, but don't miss next week's show. That's all I got. All right, let's talk about tech news of the week. I have a slide. Image slideshow. Pop up. And so there isn't much going on here. This is a quickie. The Raspberry Pi 5 is supposed to start shipping this week. So I checked my order status today. Nothing. But when it comes in, man, I can't wait. Here, let me share a little tidbit with you. I mentioned something about this last week, but I went a little deeper down the hole to learn about it. So they built this new Raspberry Pi. It takes more power than all the previous Raspberry Pis. 5 volts, so your usual, phone charger type power supply, except the high end on those tends to be 2.4 amps or 3.1 amps. And then if you get the intelligent ones like the PD and the cheese and things like that, then they do a little more power. But there is a set of power standards and a set of power cables that are designed to run over these, run with these 5-volt chargers and USB connectors. And they never made one. There was never a standard defined for 5 volts at 5 amps. In fact, we go from 5 volts at 3.1 amps to 5 volts at 20 amps. And the Raspberry Pi folks said, we're not going to do any of the intelligent power delivery systems, Power PD and Power Now, and there's another one in there whose name I've forgotten, because that takes up more silicon and more real estate, and the Raspberry Pi is pretty crowded. So they're have made custom 5 volt, 5 amp power supplies. Nobody's making them yet. There's no clones out there. There's no knockoffs. Yeah, there's ways to make them. I could wire one something creative with a marvelous power supply, but I went the same kind of wall warts as everything. So I ordered these Raspberry Pis, and then I had to order the power supplies, and one's going to come in before the other, and it's going to be, I got to wait more. It's going to kill me. So I checked on both of those orders. Same company. I got them from sparkfun.com. SparkFun, contact me. We'll do advertising for you. So when it comes in, project number 1 is one we did 3 weeks ago here, Kdenlive, the video editor, because there was a lot of press from the early testers who are saying this one is certainly as close as we've ever been to a low-power desktop replacement. Well, duh, it's more powerful than the last one. But the power specs, the speed specs that are coming out on this thing run somewhere in the, all benchmarks, 60 to 200% faster than on the fastest Raspberry Pi 4, and that's without overclocking. So I think we got a shot at doing products like Kdenlive, real-time nonlinear video editing on the new Pi. So I got 3 coming in. I cannot wait. And I've got a couple unopened Raspberry Pi 4s that I will sell because I won't need them. Slide 2. This is the official SELinux logo, in case you've never run across it. So I've already kind of gone through most of what I want to talk about here. When you read the Oracle Linux documentation, it says by default SELinux is enabled. And typically when they do a port and they port it over for ARM, they do everything exactly the same. But as I said, when I made the changes, all I got was it's still disabled. So I dug and I changed and I rebooted and joined the devs. They're working on the question. I'm working on the question. We're going to do an SELinux episode. We're going to enable it and configure it in the next 4 weeks, probably 3. And so if I don't get it running on a Raspberry Pi in that time, we'll do it on an x86 platform. This is need to know Linux stuff if you're going to play in the Linux world, and many of us do. Did I do? Yeah, I did. Oh man, now that I'm thinking about it, I should have done a different one. So I was at a conference on Monday and Tuesday. It was an AI conference up in Dallas. It was a marketing conference. There was a company who was pushing their services and their products, and you know how this stuff can save your business money. But it was done much more conference style. There were breakout rooms, and there were customers who were they touting the product? I suppose. You know, they weren't brought in just because they're beautiful people, but it was educational because there was a lot of people there who want to understand, would AI work in my business? How would it work in my business? And so there was a lot of background about the technology of AI. So I spent a couple of days at this conference and I learned so much that I may have learned nothing. I learned how little I know, I'll tell you that. But, you know, it was a waterfall job. And you know, the first breakout session and the first seminar and the keynote, hey, cool, I get all that. And then comes the next one, and that kind of pushes out the stuff from the first. And by the time I'm out of the end of the second day, my brain was like a half a piece of zucchini. It was just not. AI is so much more than the world that you and I mess with, okay? ChatGPT is AI, or it's a conglomeration of AI components, but so much more. So this conference sort of deconstructed the whole AI infrastructure and experience and then put it back together. It was all about implementing AI in organizations to find and or create solutions that are specific to your organization and, bottom line, to save money. It starts with data. And boy, right there, you know, you can spend days doing this, and you could spend a couple of years in college becoming a data scientist. Okay, those are two really big terms that got thrown around as the beginning process. There are data scientists, there are data analysts. Data scientists are people who source and collect data, information. Data analysts take the collected information and convert it into usable output for, let's call them their customers, their clients, not necessarily paying people, but you know, my boss wants to understand what all this means. Okay, so I'm going to make an output for my boss. He's my customer, he's my client. And that just goes on for weeks and months and years as a process. But we gather data, and after we gather data, while the data analysts are certainly going to be heavily involved, this is where AI comes in. AI analyzes the data, it learns about the data, and then it begins to create results, output results. And there's all kinds of different AI. Now I'm not at that point in there. So we add AI into the AI engine into this mix. AI engine accesses the data. It uses large language modules, LLMs, and researches the data to understand it. Then we expand the LLMs to support prompts. Who's going to need AI to generate an output? And let's give them a way that they can communicate with the AI and ask it questions. So, hey, AI, what's my projected revenue for next year? And AI has to not just read that data, it has to understand revenue and forecasting, and it just gets so deep and so involved. And this company, of course, they sell all of the pieces and the consulting to make all that happen and work with the folks. Because not only do we have to give LLMs the ability to understand prompts and create appropriate prompts, we have to have a way for people to put in those prompts, dashboards and consoles. Maybe we're dealing with, I don't know, some kind of technical support. Doesn't have to be computer technical support. Financial institution is trying to provide information to their customers about investing and things like that. And they obviously have teraquads, let's go Star Trek, of data. And a customer calls up and asks a question that's going to require some AI research. So our phone handler, probably not just your basic operator, has to be able to communicate with the AI in such a way that the AI understands the context and the nature of the question and all of that good stuff. It's involved, it's deep, it's heavy, it's amazing. There's a continuous development cycle. Data gets added in some of these environments dynamically. Hundreds of megabytes of data bytes per day. Data bytes of data per day. Does that information get incorporated dynamically the second it comes in and require analysis? Do we wait to the end of the day and bump in a couple hundred megs or whatever? All those things have to be accommodated. It's so huge. So we had people who had implemented these guys' services in their organizations, and we save 10 million a year by doing this, and it cost us 4 million to get it implemented. So over the course of time, and fine. I just thought it was really interesting. Some of the companies that were there, Dallas Fort Worth Airport, which is gigantic. They were one of the people who saved tens of millions. There's lots of healthcare industry people, and so many pieces of that I wasn't aware of. Software companies, search engine companies, outsourced AI houses, another dozen or so. It was truly fascinating. Let me walk you out with one other factoid. I gave you one, data scientists and data analysts. Now I'll give you the fact that there are a number of categories or classifications of AI, but when you get down to it, there's two, and everything else is a subcategory. There is generative AI and there is predictive AI. Generative AI takes input data and it takes prompts and it generates something new, a new solution, new information that has never been presented in this way before. So that's generative. If it makes a picture, right? It's got to have access to how to draw pictures of trees and birds and lakes and all that good stuff. Then it's got prompts. And so then it can take prompted inputs. Create a background with a green field and a large oak tree growing in the middle of it. And it's this many acres. Okay, you get all that stuff. And then in the end, it generates some picture. And then there's, of course, predictive, which calculates potential outcomes. We say, hey, based on the information that you've studied, tell me what our merchandise losses will be next year. So it's pretty neat stuff. I did something new this week. And before we get into that, let's go see what else you guys got going on here. You hear me lowish. You always hear me lowish. It will never change until I totally rebuild the studio. I'll get right here. Now I'm not low, but my voice is. Let's see in here. I got to catch up with you guys. Have you taken the Sec Plus exam? I have taken the Sec Plus exam. I will be taking it again very soon. I want to take the new one. When it comes out, 701. In a dev project. Yeah, I know, but look, I am a peripheral dev. I am not a dev. They know it. I know it. You guys certainly know it. It's not what I do. But I do like the idea of working with the group. Jason says, I was going to ask in Discord if you had any update on the Pi 5. So now we know. Is that supposed to look like a combination lock? Yes, it was supposed to look like a padlock. Now, I use this word cloud generator online every week for the various shows that I do. And it's almost like an artificial intelligence. It's really kind of cool. A lot of different inputs and Cool stuff. And one of them is the shapes. There are hundreds of shapes to select from that get filled in with the keywords. Prompt engineers for AI, who must be on time. You're welcome. All right, so I did something new this week. I don't know where this is going to go. No slide. Tech headlines for the week. Mostly I don't go into the research on this. I just take the headline and face value and move on. But so I got 4 or 5 of them, just real quick in here. First headline, research. This is a cool headline. It deserves delving into. Researchers show ChatGPT and other AI tools can be manipulated to do what? We know all the stuff it does. It helps people study. It helps people cheat. Oh, yeah, it helps people cheat. It can be manipulated to produce. Now, people do this. People have it write code for them. Sometimes because they want to save time and effort. Just don't want to go through all that. Sometimes because they're cheating. I'm supposed to turn in a Python script for my class, and I don't know how to write it. Here, I'll do one that's near and dear to someone's heart here. Hey, ChatGPT, write me a Python script where I can play rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock. So, how about asking ChatGPT to create malicious software? Oh my gosh. Headline. That's as far as I went into it. Next headline. Artificial intelligence predicts the future of artificial intelligence research. I went down that one a little bit. This was the first known project where they turned a bunch of scientific papers, made it available to some AI engine, and he read through all the scientific papers and then was asked to give a prediction based on what you've learned about AI from these entries. Tell us about the future of AI research. I don't know the answer to it. It's just headlines. Next headline. Researchers create magnetic micro robots that work together to assemble objects in 3D environments. Okay, they're micro, so they're uber tiny. And I don't know what the first thing that comes to your mind is, because I don't know what the first thing that came to mind was. I see construction and assembly, and my mind leaps to skyscrapers and things like that. But then I did look into the first paragraph of the article, and it came from a surgical products company. These guys are making robots that can do either directed or autonomous surgical procedures using robots that just don't work on flat surfaces. They can climb around and move tissue and suture and open and close and gather, take this out. It should be really interesting. I didn't go down this one. I didn't know this is a chicken and an egg kind of thing. Headline: dim-witted pigeons use the same principles as AI to solve tasks, study shows. So I don't know if that means AI was modeled after pigeons, or the way they think and the way they problem solve. If it's a coincidence, hey, look, this is what we learned about pigeons. That's the same way we did AI. I don't know where that's going, but found it interesting. And one last one. I like this headline. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart because of where I work. Sabotage tool takes on AI image scrapers. That was a tough one to parse. And so I read a little bit of the actual article here. So here's the problem. AI machines that go out and gather data, they go out and gather images so that they can learn how to make images. And wow, this is a toughie, right? Artists are upset. My stuff that's on the web is being copied by AI people, by AI machines, to be used as part of their knowledge base in making new stuff. They're upset about that. And I understand that's upsetting. You're using my stuff. But you put it on the web in a place where they could get it. So, nonetheless, for those that are upset about it, tools have been created to sabotage an AI's machine ability to gather, to scrape those images. So I don't know what it all means. It's interesting, and we'll just go with that, huh? Reading notes. All right. That takes me to the project section. It's not going to be a long project. We're talking, we're thinking. Let's see who has chimed in with anything else before we get started on that. Okay, you said something we got to mention that. Hey, you were going to fess up to that. Yes, you did write that RPSLS code, and it worked. Scott wrote a program that would play, or allow him to play, or other users to play rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock. He came in one day and said, hey, I signed up for a new coding course. And of course, we got coders in the office who are just desperate to jump in on it. I'm not one of them, but I was desperate to watch and learn. And it was fun. Lots of interesting back and forth. And it was an exercise, as I recall, in logic, trying to figure out, oh, wait, that's a circular logic thing. I guess all these people who are pushing AI never seen iRobot or Megan. You're right. or the sad ones. What was the one with Haley Joel Osment? I pronounced his name right. Now we'll have AI drones pooping on us. So Amazon has finally kicked off their first actual prototypes and tests of delivering packages with drones, and it's about an hour and a half from here in College Station, the home of the Texas A&M Aggies. So I haven't heard anything. I don't know if the first delivery has been done, but slated to start in the next days or weeks or whatever it is. So, been done already. Remember the white blimp that crossed half the U.S.? Yeah. Yeah, no. It was a survey that blew off course. And the other one, too. Good tea tonight. All right, well, let's talk project. It's not really a project today. It's a little bit of demonstration. It's a little bit of presentation. It's discussion. And so what I've called today's topic is an SELinux primer, because when I called it a primer back in grade school, I was roundly chastised. Hey, I put the same spelling thing in when I'm making bullets. They're primers, but if it's a book, it's a primer. Okay, fine. So this is a primer. We'll use it to kind of lay down a little bit of groundwork for some upcoming Linux show, which will happen within the next 3 to 4 weeks. SELinux, Security Enhanced Linux, takes the Linux security system, which is a DAC, a discretionary access control system, and adds a new layer to it, and it's a MAC layer, a mandatory access control. So let's clear those up, right? These are terms that if you're playing with Security Plus, you're going to have run across. And if you're going to play with Security Plus, you will run across them. And let me give you the very, very short explanation of them. Do I have a slide for this? I think I do. There's all kinds of access control methodologies out there. The two biggies that turn up on Sec Plus are DAC and MAC. So DAC is discretionary access control. Basically, what we do in a DAC system is we plug a name of a user or a group onto the access control list of a file, a directory, or another resource. It's name tagging. Okay? Some user, Fred, tries to access this resource. The operating system looks at the resource, looks at the approved users tag, and says, well, there's one approved user on here. It's a group called accountants. And then it has to go check and see if Fred is a member of that group. And if he is, cool, he can access that file. If he's not, then he can't. Oh, wait a minute. Fred is also a specified user. Okay, right. So we apply names and groups to files and directories and some other kinds of resources. That's DAC, discretionary access control. Mac, mandatory access control. This is one that we're all familiar with from movies and television, and some folks like Tullowit who've actually used this in the real world. In mandatory access control, we apply to a file, a directory, or a resource a level label. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. Or maybe terms that you're more familiar with. Open, private, secret, top secret. Right? And then on accounts, we apply a degree of accessibility. So let's say I've got some resource that's a file and it's level 3, it's secret. And Fred tries to access it. So the OS is going to look at Fred's account and say, do you have a label that says you are secret or top secret or eyes only? If so, you can access this file. If you're not, then sorry, you get denied. Media access control. Mandatory access control. And it gets more sophisticated than that. If you have this level of access, you can read that file. If you have that level of access, you can not only read it, but you could also edit it, change attributes. So we're going to take our DAC Linux system and we're going to add Mac to it. That's what SELinux in a very tiny nutshell is. All right, I got a slide here because what I want to show you is how to turn it on. Seems so simple because it really is, except it doesn't seem to work. This is a file that I'm going to show you on live, real time. And this is the entire file, almost the entire file as it exists. There's a lot of things that you can do with this thing in theory, but there are essentially two things that you can do with it. One, you can enable or disable SELinux in a Linux system by the white line in the middle of this form. SELinux equals enforcing. And if you look above that, the 3 lines tell us the 3 possible settings for SELinux in this particular computer. Enforcing, that means security policy is enforced. I'm going to come back to that word in a minute. We could also set it to permissive. Permissive says 2 things really. One, that it generates warnings instead of actually enforcing things. Actually, that's it. That's all it does. I'm good with that. And then there is disabled. Okay, SELinux is turned off. After we've turned it on in enforcing and or permissive mode, then we go down to the bottom here and we say, okay, what kind of enforcement do we want to do there? And there's targeted, minimum, and MLS. Targeted means there is a specific list of processes that are internal to this Linux system that are automatically protected by Mac. No more and no less. So that's something that we want to do if we want to secure our system. Now, if we want to secure other pieces of our system, applications, access to printers, things like that, then we would switch it to targeted, and you have to create files that define what resources, what policy, or what processes you want protected, how much protection do you want to afford them, and things like that. Those are called policies. So back up to the top, if we set SELinux to enforcing, we must then create policy files. MLS is multiple layers of Mac, and the only customers, users of these flavors of Linux who use that stuff are governments and militaries. Did all that. Now there was a setting under the SELinux type where we said targeted or minimum or MLS. So again, minimum creates an internal protection file that says I will protect certain processes, access to the kernel, things like that. I don't want somebody badgering the guts of my Linux system. And what's interesting about that is when you boot up, this part matters. This really matters. The system during boot checks to see if that line in that file is enabled. And he says, oh, okay, if it is, then we're going to check what type we're targeted or we're minimum. And if we're minimum, he says, okay, I know the rules of that. There's a configuration file, and I'm going to take those rules and I'm going to cache it in an SELinux special memory area. And now whenever any user or any process tries to access any file, directory, or other process, SELinux says, whoa, 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 whoa. Not so fast, buddy boy. Let me first of all check this cache area and see if you're trying to get to one of the protected services. And if so, do you have the right level of access in order to get there? That's minimums. And if you do, cool beans. And if you don't, he says, hang on a second. You're not out of the water yet. There is another file that I can check. That's a file. It's not cached up in memory. And let me go over and look at that. And if you're in there, cool, you can access the resource. And of course, these are computers. It all happens really fast. It's not like you feel a delay while this is happening. And if you're not in that cache or that file, then you get denied the access that you want. It's a good thing, right? We're trying to keep hackers out. The default for SELinux is everything is denied except what is explicitly granted. And that's what makes turning on SELinux dangerous. Because there are core processes that might get denied if you didn't create appropriate policy files first, that will cause your system to hang during the boot and be forever unbootable. Yeah, there's kind of sort of maybe some ways we could get past it, but there's nothing you can do to log in and fix it. You're going to have to connect to that hard drive somehow else and go and change the file entry. All right, creating policies. I am definitely not getting into that here. I don't understand it fully myself. I read it enough to get a basic understanding of the concept. And then when I looked at the actual files, I came to understand that there is not just a learning curve for creating the files. You've got to know Linux. You've got to know internal processes, what you want accessible, how much access you want, who you want to access, what other processes have to access them. Same for applications, same for everything. So you're going to have to create policy files for all this stuff. There's tools out there to learn all this stuff. It would take time. There's command line tools. There's graphical user interfaces. So those are all kind of cool. So let me show you a couple live things here and one slide. So let's say that I've gone into that file that I just showed you and I've set SELinux equals enable. Now it doesn't happen until you reboot. So I've rebooted and fortunately I didn't get hung in the process. So now I'm supposed to have SELinux up and running. Let's see that. How would I find out if I have SELinux up and running? Well, there are 3 commands that will help you know. And first of all, let's go take a look at the file itself. I'm logged in as a user who can use sudo privileges. So I'm going to say, got to go over to this thing, cd to the etc. I'm going to start by going to the etc folder. And I want to show you something here. I want to say ls any file or directory that starts with sy. And if you look at these, you will see this first one. There's system-release in teal color. And then it shows you, oh, here we go. There's a folder called sysconfig. And it shows you some contents of that. That's the folder that I want. Now, here's what's really cool. Sometimes, let's do this. Let's say I want to look at the fs tab file up here. Second column, third row down, fs tab. So I might want to cat it. Just see its contents. Cat fs. Now I've started something here. All I have to do is touch the tab key. And he says, hey, I found something that started with fs and only one thing that started with fs. So let me fill the rest of that in for you. By the way, Microsoft does the same thing here. So if I want to cd into a directory, I can do the same thing. There's one called sysconfig, and I say cd sys, and I'm hitting the tab key, and it says, I don't know what you're talking about, but it's not giving me what I want. Sysconfig is a special directory that says, I'm not going to make it easy for people to get to. You got to know it's there. So, okay, I do know it's there, sysconfig. So I'm in the Etsy sysconfig folder, PWD, working directory. There we go. And there's only a few files in here, and the one file that I care about is this bluish green one, SELinux. So that one I can actually use. I'm going to nano that one. Sudo nano SELinux. Use my tab key. Hey, you're using sudo. Give me a password for it. Okay. Zebra, alligator, pomegranate. So here's that file in its entirety. And basically it comes down to the fact that I got two active lines in here. SELinux equals disabled. And if we go up toward the top of that file, I should be able to set it, starting third, fourth, and fifth lines down, to either enforcing, permissive, or disabled. No matter what I pick and reboot, it never enables. And then down further at the bottom here, once I've enabled it or made it permissive, then I should be able to select an SELinux type from the next to the last three lines, targeted minimum or MLS. How are we doing here? Oh, very good. Almost done. So now I want to check and see what's happened. Hang on, I slid my notes. There we go. So there's two that will tell me what's going on with SELinux. One is called... Stop it. Hang on. Control Z, Control F, SETI. There we go. Click over here. SE for SELinux status. C status. And it says disabled, and that's all it says. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Because it's supposed to show me a lot more information, but only if it's enabled. Since I can't enable it in this machine, it's not helping me out. If I only wanted to see that thing, in whether or not it was enabled or disabled or something like that, I would say get enforce. Show me the status of the SELinux enforcement setup. Get enforce. So it's pretty much the same thing, right? If I want to change it, I'm going to use another command called set enforce. But let me show you one more thing here before I do that, because I want to talk about that. Slideshow up. So this is what I would see with SE status if it were enabled. SELinux status would show me enabled. It would show me where the file system that tracks and manages SELinux happens, and its root directory, and what kind of policies we're using. This one's got targeted policies, so it's not using the minimum, and it's not using disabled. It's currently enforcing. And okay, this part matters here. It's currently enforcing, and its mode from the config file is enforcing. And this is a government one because they've got MLS status going on here, multi-layer support. So when we make a setting in that SELinux config file that says enabled, that's what happens to it when it boots up. No matter what else you do, no matter when else you do it, if that line is in that file and it says enabled, when you boot up, that's how your computer is going to come up. But you can change it after it's booted up with a command that won't last through the next boot up. Let's say that I was enabled right now and I'm having a problem and I don't want to go into the file and reboot my system because I may not be able to solve my problem or whatever. So I'm going to change it in a non-persistent fashion, and I'm going to do that with the set enforce command. Set enforce. I'm going to run this without any parameters. And it will tell me, hey, this is how you got to use it. You either got to say set enforce enforcing, set enforce permissive, or you can use binaries, set enforce 1 or set enforce 0. So let's try and make it enforcing. Nope, you can't turn it on, it's off. And it was off that way. And that's because, again, for whatever reason, it either doesn't work in the Raspberry Pi version of this, or I'm doing something wrong and I'm missing something. I sure don't think so, but you get the idea. So if it was in enforce mode, and that was the way it came up, and I wanted to disable that for the moment just so I could do some work, then I could switch it to permissive or 0, and that would be great. I'll do my thing without encountering SELinux restrictions or Mac restrictions or anything like that. And I could either turn it back on with set enforce, or you haven't been watching a word of this. What a goober. I'll show you that real quick again. Get status. Clear. Get enforce. Showing you disabled. SE status. There we go. And so I try to change it with set enforce. No parameters. And it says all you got to do is set it to enforce or set it to permissive, which is 1 or 0. So we try to force it into enforcing. And it says you can't. It's disabled. It's got to be enabled, and then you can disable it. And once it's disabled with this, you can enable it again with enforcing. But whatever you do here won't survive the next boot. It will always boot based on what it sees in that boot configuration file. Well, that's pretty much it. This is my SELinux primer. I just want to expose you to some terminology, and again, I don't know much about this stuff yet. I will know a lot more over the next couple of weeks than I do, and I'll have it up and running, and we'll do it as a project, and I hope you're playing with Linux. It's just fun, it's useful, it's practical, it's awesome. And if I don't get that going, if I learn that Oracle isn't working or doesn't work, I'll try it with some of the other Raspberry Pi-based Red Hat distros, Rocky or Alma, or maybe even CentOS Stream, but that's going to go away. Fedora. And if not, I will call our friends over at Rocky and say, hey, we got, or if all the wheels come off the wagon, as I said, we don't have to do this with a Raspberry Pi. I just do that because it's fun for me. Hey, that's the show, guys. We got another 7 minutes. Let's see what's going on in the crowds. Never heard of RPSLS till now. Looking it up. Never. I've heard of RPS. Okay, remote procedure. No, I know RPCs. I don't know RPS. Oh, I'm sorry. RPSLZ. Yeah, right. Rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock. Right. That's where we all learned it from. I never thought about it. I assumed they invented it on the show. They have a couple of physicists and some other PhDs who are the primary science consultants. But that wouldn't put me past a comedy writer who's kind of a geek to have invented that name and even invented the rules. Pretty simple. Oh, Patricia Gray sounds like something I do. I'm safe. No one's getting it, including me. Yeah, I read that after I did this, and it was a sweat moment. Oh, wait, good news. I didn't lock myself out. So I realized after the fact how terrified I should have been, huh? All right. Lizard. It should have a Z in it. Did his voice just go lower? Voice crispies and lower voice. Well, and I think that probably tells us OBS is going to crash again. But if it does, I won't come back since we're on the last seconds of the show. Hopefully we will survive for the next 5 minutes. Lots of popping. Oh, well, I did something. I did a screen refresh. That may have caused the problem. Am I still? Luke. No! Oh, God, I love geeks. I mean, I love real geeks because this is the most important trivia in all of Star Wars to them. Who said, Luke, I am your father? No one. Darth Vader never said, Luke, I am your father. Do you care about this next sentence? Because this drives me nuts that people do. He never says, Luke. He apparently just says, I am your father. But this just matters so much to the real Star Wars geeks. That's so important to them. It's somebody do a one-liner here. That darn heart thing is covering Tullowit's link. I can't figure out what it is. Oh, okay. It's obviously theories of RPSSL. Okay. All right. I will look at it post-show. Hey, let's do something Dave never does. We're wound up. By the way, again, Halloween show. I will probably keep this up for next week's show, but maybe not. Like I said, man, do not miss next week's show. I didn't do any social media announcements on today's show because Monday, Tuesday, I was up for 40 out of 48 hours doing that conference. As I was working out, I was setting it up, then attending it, and then the teardown. Oh, the nightmare of teardown. You have to go through city ordinances just to work on the loading dock. It was horrible. And finally got out of there. I don't know, 8 o'clock at night, 8:30 at night, something like that. It was raining, it was dark, it was miserable, it was hot, it was humid. I did a really poor job of strapping down my load. I knew I'd have to stop at least once, and turned out twice was the right order. But by the time I got home, my eyes were like sandboxes, and I was hallucinating for lack of sleep, and it's a miracle I didn't kill myself or someone else. So I got a couple of days of really good sleep to catch up on all that. But what it all meant is I did not have time to do any kind of show prep, and so I didn't do any kind of social announcements. There will be no social announcements on next week's show. Don't miss it. Tell your friends, because it's going to be a weather change for ADRAMADA, okay? The ADRAMADA Discord server will begin to grow. The shows will begin to improve. It's not bad right now content-wise. We just need an audience, right? And that will change too, because I'll hit more announcements and media and things like that. It's going to get fun. It's going to get fun. I'm glad you guys are here on the ground floor. All right, anybody else got anything to finish up with before we pull the big red button? Don't do that. Sandcast.com, theories on RPSSL. I'm opening that now. There. Bump, can you see it now? Yes, I could. Thank you. BTT. Wow, I haven't heard that in so long. Bumped it up. Oh, I love you guys, man. You are my EPOP or outside of the misses. All right, everybody, thank you as ever and always for joining the show. Sorry it wasn't a particularly impressive show. Hope it was. You got a little bit of interesting out of it, at least from some of the tech news. And again, we'll be broadening our horizons again short term. Scott and I are going to talk about Wi-Fi and 4G and 5G and 10G and GG. Nah, that's what you call grandma down here in Texas and in the deep south. Oh, hey, Jason, congrats on the upcoming interview. Hope that goes really well for you. This doesn't happen without you guys, and I know there's not many of us here live, but we get plenty of folks who watch it on the archives. If you're watching on the archives, hey, join the Discord server. Let me throw that up real quick. It's in the description too, but I'll put it on the command line feed, the ADRAMADA Discord server invitational. There it is. And with that, let us finally wind this thing up. How do you do that? You go over here and you click this, and then you go over here and you click that, and you tell everybody, I wish you to have a great rest of the week. Take care of each other. Take serious steps to stay healthy, and if at all, call or visit your parents. If you did not see this notification on the Discord server where I work, the Tuesday night shows have been discontinued. We're out of person power resources and time, and it takes me too long to prep them, and I'm the only one who's been doing them, and that just takes up way too much time. And so we evaluated it and said, no mas. And that means, never forget, technology is great, but the greatest resources we have are still you and I. And with that, I bid you good night. I'll see you on ADRAMADA next week, and that's the only platform we're going to run into each other for a while now. Until then, remember, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so, eep op ork. Thanks, everybody.